Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, breaking down the Knicks 113-112 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And after this loss, I think I've just got one big question. Why isn't Jalen Brunson getting the calls that his peers are getting? Next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking insights and sounds on YouTube. I appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. That is, of course, after you hit that subscribe button on both places. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And the Knicks lose 113-112 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And look, before I get into this this whole first segment tirade on why I think Jalen Brunson is being treated poorly by the league this year and is not getting nearly the amount of calls that he deserves, given his offensive role and everything, I'll just say, this was a pretty solid game for both teams. The Knicks unfortunately wound up having to face the Thunder at full strength. I mean, I guess it's good that one of the young faces of the league managed to come back, but I believe that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was doubtful coming into this game, which usually says that there's about a 75% chance that the player won't play. And yet he was able to suit up. So the Thunder came into this at full strength as a team, and the Knicks obviously still without OG Anunoby, without Julius Randle, and then found themselves without Mitchell Robinson, who was dealing with some ankle soreness going into this game. So I definitely think that having Mitch probably could have made a big difference, because the Knicks definitely outmuscled the Thunder in this game and just needed, I think, that little extra push in that regard. But yeah, the main guy that the Knicks really needed in this game, like they need in every game, was Jalen Brunson, who had 30 points, shot 11 of 25 in this game. He shoots 4 of 11 from three and makes 4 of 8 free throws, which, I mean, look, he could have converted a little better on those. So, not the best there, but I do want to zero in on that 8 attempts number for his free throws. So, over Jalen Brunson's last 2 games, he has 91 points because he had 30 in this one. Obviously, he had 61 in the previous game. He has taken 72 field goal attempts. And against 72 field goal attempts, he has attempted just 14 free throws. And I don't know, that stands out to me as a little odd. And I'm not totally sure why he's not getting free throw attempts compared to some of his contemporaries. And you might be listening to this and be like, don't blame the refs, blah, blah, blah. And normally I don't. Like, I normally am pretty adamant of, like, if you're saying that the refs cost you a game, you probably never were going to win the game to begin with. Although in this one, once again, I think that, I'm recording this before the last 2-minute report has come out. I feel fairly certain that in the last 2-minute report, the NBA is going to admit that they missed a call here and that the Knicks should have gotten an extra free throw, which could have set them up in a position where the Thunder then would have to make the tough decision between, do we go for the tie or do we go for the win at the end of the game, rather than SGA just being able to, make a shot over Deuce McBride, who played really good defense on him, by the way, and win the game. So let's just take a look at, I didn't even dig that deep on these stats yet, and I kind of want to do a whole episode about it now at this point, and I'll probably try to do that with Gavin this week. But Jalen Brunson right now, 4th in the NBA in points per game, and he is 14th in free throw attempts per game. So quite a discrepancy there. I mean, you might still be saying, like, whoa, you're still top 20 in free throws attempted, but let's look into something else here. So the top 3 scorers in the NBA this year, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who the Knicks just faced. You guessed it, they're 1, 2, and 3 in free throw attempts per game as well. So Giannis gets 11 free throw attempts per game. Luka gets 8.9 free throw attempts per game, and SGA gets 8.6 free throw attempts per game. Jalen Brunson gets 6.1. against those same guys. So almost 3 attempts less than even the lowest person in that top 3 group. And Brunson finds himself, as the guy who's right on the cusp of that. Now, granted, all 3 of those guys are averaging over 30 points per game, but Brunson is averaging like 27 point something. I forget what the point whatever is, but over 27 points per game, and with 3 more free throw attempts, could end up scoring over 30. I don't know. But if we're looking at this just from an objective standpoint, or at least trying to, I think for Giannis, he gets 11 free throw attempts per game, but it's fine. Like, I think Giannis plays a totally different game than Brunson does. He's a bigger player. He plays more, of an interior game. Of course, he predicates pretty much his whole game off of the drives to the hoop and finishing strong around there. And he's constantly in the mix, in that area and getting hacked and whatever. And gets other fouls committed on. I mean, he's also not the best free throw shooter in the world, so I think the teams are a little more liberal with how much they foul him, because sometimes that's the better choice, is to just send Giannis to the line than let him go for a dunk or whatever. So we'll set that number aside, but it does seem a little odd that like Luca and SGA play very similar to how Brunson plays. Like, none of those 3 players play particularly above the rim. None of them are bigs. They're all guards and wings that, do most of their work on the perimeter. They take lots of 3-point shots. They get inside. They finish in there. They're looking to draw contact on the inside. And we consistently see Luca get tons of foul calls, and we consistently see SGA, this game maybe aside, although I actually just thought that Deuce played really, really good defense on him. But, we see those guys get a lot of benefit of the doubt calls, and, just calls where you go, oh, well, maybe that was borderline, but they're a superstar. So, of course, they got that. And just watching through this game in particular, I'm not even going to talk about like last game, where I looked through all of Brunson's field goal attempts from last game too. And, I kind of wanted to make the same point, but I was like, I feel like I don't want to ruin his big night by spending too much time talking about the free throw attempt stuff. But considering this is just a garden variety 30-point game for Jalen Brunson, let's just talk through a couple of these. So there were a few field goal attempts in this game, and I'll just go through these in order of when they happened, that stuck out to me as things that could potentially be foul calls for other players, not Jalen Brunson, though, apparently. So Lou Dort played pretty good defense on Brunson for parts of this game, but he was really, in my opinion, pressing into his landing zone really hard on every 3 that he took early on in this game. And, didn't get his foot directly under Brunson's foot or anything, but was right there. I mean, had a foot between his legs a few times. And ultimately it didn't result in Brunson, landing awkwardly or anything, but eventually it did later on in the game. And so Dort was allowed to keep pressing that button and pressing that button. And eventually Brunson did land on his foot and could have potentially, twisted his ankle or whatever. Luckily, Brunson's gotten really good at, understanding that guys are going to be in his landing zone. And he's pretty good about like landing flat on someone's foot when he sees it about to happen, and then just kind of bailing out. And luckily he did that and saved himself a potential twisted ankle there. But yeah, I mean, Dort was all up in his space a lot. And I feel like a lot of times we'll get a safety call, for a superstar in the league, hey, let's, nip this in the bud early, stop these guys from getting in their landing zone or whatever, so that we don't potentially deal with an injury later on. That didn't happen in this game. So again, maybe not by the book, like a foul per se, but one that the league and the refs decide to uh, intermittently decide how much they care about. Then we have a huge amount of contact from Aaron Wiggins on a make in the 4th that should have been an and one. If you notice a trend here, there's often, if you watch Brunson games, there's often a lot of contact or potential fouls in the 1st that don't get called, and there's a lot in the 4th that don't get called. And then he'll get a couple calls in like the 2nd and 3rd sometimes. So Aaron Wiggins, makes a big amount of contact on Brunson on a make, so that should have been an and one. Then Jalen Williams reaches in on him with about 4.5 minutes left on a made layup, and Brunson. I mean, look, you can also sort of track these by when Brunson gets upset, because he's pretty measured. Like, he's not asking that every single thing be called a foul. He's only asking that the fouls be called fouls. And he got reached in on by Jalen Williams with about 4.5 minutes left in the game, then made a layup. And that, again, potentially could have been an and one, because he was already gathered and was on his way to the hoop. So I don't know. Maybe he would have called the hoop back, but either way, I probably would have preferred the foul call there, just, for bonus situation and everything else. And then, of course, the late layup. So he got to the hoop. Uh, this was the one that put the Knicks up, which could have been the game winner, but ultimately wasn't, thanks to SGA making the shot on the other end. But um, Brunson gets to the hoop. Chet offers a contest, and then Lou Dort just comes flying in out of nowhere and basically hip checks Brunson. And then Brunson still makes it, but hits the deck hard because he got hip checked. I mean, he was essentially in the air moving, and Dort came from out of his field of vision along the baseline because of Chet contesting him, comes out of his field of vision, just straight up runs into him and hits him like thigh to leg, and just bowls Brunson over. And then Brunson doesn't get a call there. That could have led to one free throw, which could have potentially, again, made this a 2-point game, which then would have given the Thunder a more difficult decision of, okay, do we go for the tie here with SJ, or do we go for the win? Because the Knicks, I think I would say, probably had a little more momentum at that moment. So, a lot of times I think teams take that into account when they're trying to force overtime or whatever. Like, oh, are we the team that has the momentum here, or are we not? Like, should we just go for the win, or should we go for the tie and then play another 5 minutes? I mean, maybe they would have looked at it and been like, well, the Knicks just played an overtime game, but either way. Yeah, I want to continue this rant a little bit more in just a second, and also get into Deuce McBride's night, get into Isaiah Hartenstein's night, and talk through a few of the role players as well. So I'll get into that in just a sec on Locked On Knicks. But first, I have to let you all know about our friends over at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. So March is over, but the biggest moments in college basketball tip off the month of April. Be a part of the action on Prize Picks for both the men's and women's college basketball tournaments. And you can get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And Prize Picks has something that every sports fan, from basketball and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between, can get behind. You can pick LeBron, Caitlin Clark, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham all in the same entry. It's pretty crazy stuff. I love using Prize Picks. I think it's really fun. Now that we're in the multi-sport season, definitely be doing a lot of Mets and Knicks entries. Might be betting some unders on the Mets after this first weekend. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, and I'm back in to keep talking through this game and keep talking through the Jalen Brunson situation. I honestly wanted that to just be one segment, but I can't help myself. It's I don't know. It just really bugs me last night. It was very. He's been going through it all year. Tibbs has been staying tight-lipped mostly. So is Brunson. They basically just say, watch the tape, see what you see. Well, I figured I'll at least do my part and say what I'm seeing. But I'm not to get to the point from the last segment that I ended on. Like, I'm not even necessarily saying that every one of these things that I highlighted is a foul, um, but they're calls that other superstars get regularly and that they get the benefit of the doubt on. And it's just, I don't know. It's unfortunate that the NBA is ultimately a politics league. Um, I think I think we're quickly approaching, unfortunately, where we're going to have another betting scandal at some point too. Just because there seems to be more and more things that just seem fishier and fishier. And maybe it's just, you know, uh, trying to find something that's not there because, you think that, oh, well, there's betting is legal now in the US and blah, blah, blah. And like there's been NBA ref betting scandals before. So like maybe there's more betting scandals now that it's more prevalent, whatever. And you're just, this is a case of me and other people just like seeing what we think there is there. But I don't know. I think that regardless, the NBA is a politics league. It always has been. It always will be. Certain guys get better calls than others, and for whatever reason, Brunson just doesn't get the calls that his peers get, despite putting up the same numbers, putting up the same performances, and everything else. It's I don't know. It's not the best. But I will say just before I close on the Brunson point here, this guy has just been like insanely necessary, I think is the best word that I could think of for the Knicks lately. Ends with a plus 17 plus minus in this game. And that was by far the best on the team. They vastly won Jalen Brunson's minutes. They vastly lost the minutes that he didn't play, and then they lost by one. They were plus 17 when he was on the floor, and they were minus 18 when he was off the floor. So, I mean, it's tough. They're so reliant on him right now, thanks to being still so shorthanded on star power. And I actually had a little bit of a revelation. I've been trying to figure out the whole like Precious Achua conundrum because he was a team low minus 13 tonight, despite I don't think he played particularly poorly or anything. Once again, the poor guy just keeps not sharing the floor with Jalen Brunson. I think is the problem. And that's why he's ultimately ending with these hugely low plus minuses so often. Um, so poor Precious, but yeah, he ends up with a minus 13 in this game. Um, let's talk about Deuce McBride for a sec, though, because I thought the Deuce had a really good game. Ends with 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, shoots 4-10 from three. So back to being more of an offensive force. And on top of it, he made Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's life absolute hell on the other end. I thought that he did a great job establishing the tone early. It seemed obvious that Tibbs challenged him to say, this is your job all night. You're going to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You're going to be up in his chest all night. You're going to guard him clean. You're not going to foul him, but you're going to, make sure that every shot that he takes, he feels your presence there. And Deuce absolutely did that. He played some of the best one-on-one defense I think that we've seen any Nick play this year so far. Just stayed up in SGA's chest the whole time, was offering contests on every shot, even with smartly. Like there was one play where SGA kind of drove in and went for a sort of to try to like clear space and maybe get a foul call, get Deuce to swipe down on him or whatever deep in the lane. And instead Deuce just kind of pulled the chair out, like leaned back, put his arms behind his back to make sure there could be no foul call, and just sort of like psyched out SGA in that moment, which I thought was pretty cool. Like, SGA I guess it was just a recognition from Deuce of like, I don't think this guy's a plan. I don't think that he's set enough. He's banking on me fouling him at this point. And, SGA missed the shot in that case. Right up until the last shot too, I think I already mentioned, but like, yeah, poor Deuce. Like it's a shame that that shot went in because it was really good defense that he played on SGA there. I think I don't think that he did anything wrong in that case. I think SGA was just longer and is one of the best shot makers in the NBA right now, and happened to make it over him. But Deuce did his job and then some. I thought that he had a really really good game and deserves a recognition for it. So there it is. But yeah, I think Isaiah Hartenstein did a really good job as well. Had one of his most complete games of the season, just absolutely ate Chet Holmgren's lunch over and over. Josh Hart had a good game as well. And then I want to get into the standings a little bit as well, because the Knicks, this is going to be a key stretch. They have 8 games left, and it's going to obviously have a lot of standing on, where they're going to finish for the year and what their playoff seating is going to be and everything else. So I want to get into that in just a sec. But first, just a reminder, Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking, and more videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right, and I'm back in to get into my final points on this game. I don't want to belabor it too much because this game was not a ton of fun, from the foul call conundrum that finally sent me over the edge on the Jalen Brunson not getting foul calls thing, to the way that the game ended, the final shot after the Knicks had a big lead, and then it kind of fell apart for them against a full strength OKC team. Not fun, but who was full strength as well was Isaiah Hartenstein. 17 points, 12 boards, 5 assists in this game. I think it was I know that he statistically had better games, like especially like rebounding and stuff, but I just thought this was one of his most complete games of the season and one of his most physically dominant games of the season. He just absolutely ate Chet's lunch, Chet Holmgren, at every opportunity. And this is maybe the fatal flaw for the Thunder going into like the playoffs this year. There's a lot of good centers in the league, and they obviously, if they want to make a run at like the finals, they're gonna have to run through Nikola Jokic at some point or another, possibly Anthony Davis with the Lakers. Like there's, uh, I just think Chet's not quite there yet, being able to compete physically because, I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein just ate him up with a couple huge putback dunks. He drove around him on the left side to get in for a slam. So, like, just kind of use quick twitch to get around Chet as well, which is probably the most impressive thing because that's where Chet should be able to compete with him. Just straight up threw his shoulder into him at one point and got a post up finish. And, Chet didn't have much to offer there. And then got an offensive board and a putback through contact for an and one. I just thought it was a great game for Hartenstein. Just a lot of physicality, which the Thunder clearly were not ready to match. And, the dominance, I think, extended to both sides of the glass. Like, Chet ends up with just 5 boards in total. Hartenstein ends up with 12. He split that, I believe, evenly 6 and 6 between offensive and defensive boards. So both ends of the floor, he was just dominating on the glass, whether it was getting to loose balls off a miss or on the offensive end, I should say, or just boxing out hard on the defensive end, getting the rebounds that came to him, or setting up Josh Hart for a ton of rebounds, which I'll get into in a sec too. And I also think with Hartenstein, like his and Brunson's chemistry just continues to be one of the big bullying elements of Jalen Brunson's success right now. He's done such a good job of, you know, really developing chemistry with him. Their chemistry in the pick and roll is huge. They've just been, I think, playing fantastic off one another. So a great game for Hartenstein, despite the end result. Josh Hart as well, I thought had a good game. 13 points, 15 boards, 6 assists. Really affected the game on the glass, which is sort of his brand at this point. Obviously punching above his weight on the glass there, but had a really good game there. I think benefited a lot from Hartenstein, kind of keeping people out of the paint with the great box outs and stuff. And for as good as the Thunder are, that again, I think they just lack in the size department, which made this a perfect matchup for Hart. To feast on the glass and then get things started in transition and stuff. And he ended up with a team high in boards over Hartenstein's 12. And so to close the show, let's get into a real quick standings update here for the Knicks. So they're sitting in fourth currently. Luckily, the Cavs aren't exactly lighting the world on fire right now either. So the Knicks have been able to sort of keep their position in regard to the Cavs, even though the Knicks have had a couple tough losses these last couple games. The Cavs lost big to the Nuggets, in on the same night. So, the Knicks find themselves in a decent position still. There's now 8 games left, and so I figured it would be helpful to kind of take a look at the standings and then just the remaining schedule to see what we're looking at here for these key final 8 games. So the Knicks are now a half game behind the Cavs for the 3rd seed. They're 3 games behind Milwaukee for the 2nd seed. But then they're one game ahead of the Magic to hold the 4 seed over the Magic at the 5 seed, and they're 2.5 games over the Pacers, and then they're 3 games over the Heat right now to avoid the play-in. So with only 8 games left, we're kind of reaching the point where things are going to start settling in soon, I think. Luckily, it seems like the Knicks would really have to crap the bed to end up lower than last year at the 5 seed. And ultimately, they're the hottest team in their last 10 games of any of the teams from 2 to 10. The best, other than the Knicks, is 6-4 in their last 10 games. The Knicks are 7-3. So they have momentum, even if it doesn't feel like it. You know, these last 2 losses have been so tight too. I think it's easy to get lost in that sometimes and be like, well, they didn't win. It's like, yeah, I mean, ultimately we won't remember, necessarily that they didn't win these games unless something catastrophic happens, like they, fall to the play-in somehow, which I think is only like a 2% chance of happening right now. But I think they've positioned themselves pretty well. So the rest of the schedule, they have a game tomorrow against Miami at Miami. Then they're going to play Sacramento at home on the 4th. And then they do have a back-to-back where they have to travel to Chicago on April 5th. Then they play at Milwaukee on April 7th. They play at Chicago again on April 9th. So a little road trip there. And that road trip by playing the Celtics on April 11th. So they are going to have, regular rest between all those games. No back-to-backs, thankfully, but they do start that trip off with a back-to-back. And then they're going to end the road trip off with a back-to-back. So they're going to be playing the Celtics on the 11th. Then they're playing the Nets on April 12th. And they get the Bulls one last time. Lots of Bulls action on the 14th, Sunday, April 14th, to end the regular season. So, I mean, it's interesting to look at this schedule, right? Like the Heat, obviously the Heat are going to bring it uh, in tomorrow's game on Tuesday night. So I think you got to prepare for that. And the Kings are going to bring it on the next game after that as well, in that game at home. But I don't know. I mean, I think the Knicks still have as good of a chance against those guys as any. I mean, it's again, those teams are not exactly upper echelon teams this year. The Heat have been playing better in the second half of the season because that's what they do. But I'm not super afraid of them in at least not as much as I maybe would have been earlier this season or certainly the end of last season. Same deal with the Kings. I just don't think that they're quite the team this year that they were last year. So I think it's winnable for the Knicks in those games. Uh, but all 3 Bulls games, I think, are super winnable. I think the Nets game is super winnable as well. So that's 4 extremely winnable games, which then just leaves you with Milwaukee and Boston. Milwaukee's going to be playing their butts off. I mean, no doubt. They're going to be trying to ensure that they can hold on to that 2 seed. If things aren't locked in the next 3 games, which they likely won't be, they're going to be looking at the Knicks saying, "Well, we have to beat these guys to keep them out of our spot." So if the Knicks are still not at full strength, I think there's a decent chance they lose that game, especially on the road. But that game against the Celtics, I mean, maybe the Celtics just look at this and say, "Oh, division rival, we're going to go all out against them." Like if we're going to have one tune-up game prior to the postseason, this will be the one. But there's a decent chance that Boston is so far ahead in that 1 seed now. I mean, I think it's a mortal lock at this point that they get it. But certainly by the time there's only 3 games left in the season, they might just be like, let's just start resting guys. They have health issues. They have, Porzingis, they've been routinely resting throughout the season. Drew Holiday has had some injury issues recently, so they might just want to say, hey, let's get everybody healthy, and they'll throw the B squad out there, or maybe they'll just leave Jalen Brown active or something. Like, I don't know. But either way, I mean, there's a decent chance, I think, that the Knicks run into a less than 100% Boston team by choice. I think that they choose to, run out a slightly lesser squad, to give some guys some rest in that game. But we'll see how that goes. Maybe they view that game against the Knicks as their last tune-up before the playoffs, and then they take the last 2 games off or whatever. I don't know what the case is, but still, I think we're looking at a scenario where out of these final 8 games, I would be surprised if the Knicks went worse than 500, which means that they should probably just tread water, if nothing else. And maybe that results in them falling to the 5 seed. Maybe it results in them holding at the 4 seed. But either way, I feel pretty good about it. I don't think that I I don't want to say there's no chance they fall to the 6th seed, but I think it's unlikely that they fall to the 6th seed and certainly not lower. So I feel pretty good about things. We obviously have to keep an eye on the injury updates. Hopefully Anunoby is able to take the floor soon. Hopefully Mitch gets back in. And hopefully we get a positive update on Julius Randle, though it seems like things keep kind of, I don't want to say trending negatively, but just not trending at all with the Julius news. So um, only time will tell. But until then, we've got you covered here on Locked On Knicks. If there's any big updates, we'll definitely do an emergency pod or something. But we'll have all the routine updates as well and have you covered for all those games and much more. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.